Excited to hear our last couple of discussions of the day. We're going to give our panelists a moment to get up to the stage and for folks to come into the room. If you are in this region and active in the community, then I really don't need to introduce the next moderator. I think that Steve Rao has at least 2 or 3 stunt doubles, because he is at every single event of any kind in the tech sector. Perhaps the most informed person that we've had here today through sheer involvement alone. He's in his 3rd term, I believe, as city councilor in the town of Morrisville, incredibly engaged in this community, and I think it's nice to have a municipal voice that's also a citizen voice to lead a discussion about infrastructure and what are the things that we need to underlie the kinds of applications and services and technologies that we've talked about today. So without further ado, Steve, I'll let you come up and introduce your panel.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here in the city of Raleigh. And first of all, I want to congratulate my good friend, Mayor-elect Mary Ann Baldwin, and I look forward to her leading the capital city. So I know she's going to be coming back in, but we want to congratulate her. And I want to just also see Mayor Vivian Jones from Wake Forest and a couple of other folks here. But I had a message before I kick off and introduce the panel. And first of all, you know, the key word I think was hit on with Nicole Raimondo about collaboration and how important it is for cities, for all of us to come together and collaborate. You know, our brand in Morrisville is live connected, live well. But a connected city is a city, I think one thing we've learned today is a city where citizens can live very well, or quality of life. And I think it's so important to continue to be the beneficiaries of the great leadership of NC Riot, Tom, NC State, the city of Raleigh, to get other cities and governments involved so that we can make the Triangle region the smartest region in the state, and Governor Cooper can one day say that North Carolina is the smartest state in the country. But with guys like Tom Snyder in the room, we are well on our way. So let's give him a round of applause for all he does. The second thing I'll add is a year ago, I was on a panel and I told you all Morrisville was going to get in the game because we weren't doing a lot. And I told you we were going to hire a CIO, and that CIO is with me today, Rick Ralph. And we're doing a lot of stuff with the town of Cary on smart cities. So Rick, thank you for being here. And if you're interested, you know, Morrisville is always ready for great ideas. So on that note, we have a great panel today. We have with us, I'm going to say who they are, and then we're going to have them just say a word about themselves. So first we have Scott Clark, he's the CIO of Chapel Hill. Chris Beall, from account executive at Building Clarity. Howard Self, who is the Director of Smart Grid Excellence at ABB, and Ann Brooks, who's a Government Affairs Manager at Crown Castle. So before we begin my questions, could we just, each of you just say a quick word about why you're here, or the role that you have?
Okay, I'll start. I'm Scott Clark. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the town of Chapel Hill. And I'm here because I've been to the previous 2 sessions that we've had, these annual sessions, and they've been an awesome way to learn a lot about what's happening in a variety of different communities. And so it's great to be here representing Chapel Hill and talking about infrastructure and a little bit about what we're doing in the town.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Beall with Building Clarity. Building Clarity is an engineering and construction company that's partnered with SAS Institute to bring advanced analytics to the building space. So here today to be a thought leader and engage with the cities and counties and institutions about how they can improve their physical infrastructure in their buildings and meet their energy and sustainability goals.
I'm Howard Self with ABB. We're a large international technology company headquartered here in Raleigh. We've been here since 1992, located on Centennial Campus with a great relationship with Raleigh, the Triangle region, and NC State University. We've got a great focus on energy efficiency, sustainability, and anything we can do to help any of the cities meet their goals. We're excited about that.
Okay, great. So what we're going to do today, I mean, I think there's 2 important conversations we're having here today. The first is, you know, what are the types of investments that we need to make in our infrastructure, and then we want to learn a little bit from an industry perspective on the kinds of technologies and IoT that we need to be thinking about within those industry sectors. So I'm going to first start with Scott. As a CIO of a city, just as a CIO that, is working with city councils and things like that, what is, in your opinion, the components of a smart city infrastructure? Because today we've heard a lot about transportation, parks, water, public safety, all of these things for our quality of life. So just what are those components as we making these investments?
Well, I think there's the obvious components where a fiber backbone across the town is something that we utilize. We also, when you start looking at the data and how it gets stored, cloud services and so on, that the infrastructure is, to us, is a multifaceted item. And we also work with assessing the needs and so on across our community. We happen to have a large university and medical center, so we have large partnerships with them. So our infrastructure, when we're thinking about it, and I guess I go back to something that was mentioned by the City of Wilson this morning, that a lot of times it's not the how, it's what. And so because of our particular physical setup with the university, with the medical center, and the size of our town, our infrastructure is set up a particular way with our fiber, and with a number of private partners who have cell systems and small cell systems that are currently being put in, and our partnerships with the university help us move information around the campus and around the town. So
We'll start off with you, Ann. I mean, you're in sort of the digital infrastructure business. So in your perspective, as we look at fiber and digital infrastructure, what are the things that government should be thinking about in terms of how making the connection with our transportation infrastructure? And, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity, Steve. I'm Ann Brooks. I'm Government Affairs Manager for Crown Castle. And I think that digital infrastructure is such a crucial part of any city, municipality, region, political organizations, planning efforts, as critical today in the 21st century as one of the questions that was asked during the last session was about the interstate highway system and how that just exploded economic development across the country. Digital infrastructure, I think, is going to do the same. It is absolutely crucial for communities to consider this important element in order to stay on top of being able to continue to develop the economic base of that community.
And as a follow-up to that, we heard Trey Rebel talk about 5G over lunch. Is 5G just something that, we know it's already here, but that's just going to make that process even better for us?
I believe that to be the case. A lot of smart city applications, as all of you know very well, they're happening already. I think the advent of 5G I do believe that it is going to be revolutionary for society, and I think that it is going to enhance, improve smart city applications already, and it's also going to enable even more data collection in order to better pinpoint usefulness to communities.
Okay, fantastic. And this is going to be very informal. We're going to keep it interactive and then hopefully have some time to open it up for questions. So Howard, ABB is a world-class market leader in the energy industry. Many of our towns and cities one of our goals is sustainability, energy efficiency, a cleaner carbon footprint. So what are the types of investments in your sector that you think it's important for cities to make in that infrastructure? We know we've got to put in the infrastructure to build the foundation for the smart city, but if I wanted a more renewable, cleaner, sustainable strategy, what do I need to be thinking about I can take back to my towns?
Sure. And, from our employees to everybody, ABB is really committed to decarbonization and the efforts it takes. And we share some messages that it is a energy provider challenge to do things, but it's also a consumer challenge is we're responsible to usage as well. So from our perspective, we have to look at across all the segments. So we've, from electrical transportation, starting especially with the cities, you've got opportunities with buses and other things that are really good opportunities to make cleaner choices with these types of things. EV infrastructure that we need to put in place to enable and have people want to have these types of things. And behind the scenes, we work with the utilities to bring technologies in to make sure that's a smooth transition. From power conversion systems, when we're trying to install solar and other things and we get pushback from, is it sustainable and types of things like that, how we bring in technologies to ensure that when we have solar, we integrate it properly with the utilities to make both the consumer happy and the utility happy. So all the technologies, I mean, we have a great focus looking at the technologies, but again, the consumer engagement and what the consumers need to do, and then the consumer responsibility also, pushing that back on both sides, I think it's very important.
So we talked about citizen engagement, but having the consumer and the citizen very engaged and giving feedback about the kinds of things that they would like to see. I mean, that's very, very helpful. Chris, you've talked, well, you know, you're building Clarity. What do you see as some of the challenges as we look at implementing technology? And could you talk a little bit about this whole notion of how you all are using analytics from the buildings, the data, and how that's helpful to them?
Yeah, so from a challenge standpoint, I think two main ones come to mind, and the first one's obvious, and that's always budget constraints. The second is the condition of the existing infrastructure. So we look mostly on the demand side, so the buildings and the assets and everything inside of that. So I think in order to get past some of those challenges, you really have to find the right partner or set of partners that can lead you through that first step. And that first step needs to include a portfolio level assessment of what you have in place, what you don't have in place, where your gaps are, and what investment needs to take place to get you through a full deployment. So I think as you take that approach and you find the partner and you understand what the investment is, it's now then starting to prioritize the deployment of technology to meet your budget constraints and to fit in your budget cycles. What's interesting about the space we play in and when you're on the demand side is that a lot of the initiatives that we put into place create cost savings. So leveraging those cost savings to now go create a fund to start to either expand that solution or to create a smart cities fund to start to go do other things is key.
Okay, great. I guess back to Scott. I mean, as it just seems, looking at it from my city council perspective, it can be pretty overwhelming. You know, a lot of this stuff costs money. We've got limited budgets. So what is the best way, once you have you know what infrastructure you want and what problem you want to solve, what's the best way about going and putting that process together where you can go find the technology? Is it pilot programs? I mean, Nicole talked about Town of Cary about a smart campus idea. So how could cities start a smart campus idea like that, or a smart initiative?
I think it may depend on the municipality, the talent that you have available, and what your needs are. From our standpoint in Chapel Hill, our process was to look for pilot projects, but to determine what our priorities would be, we got a group together where we had at least one person from each variety of departments, but pretty much every department, and also some other local entities. We do not manage our own water or sewer, so we brought in OWASA, which manages Orange County's water and sewer system, and a variety of other people, and basically brainstormed it and came up with probably a couple dozen things that we thought would be good options for piloting, things that had from a variety of different perspectives, but mostly from a customer or community perspective, what would most benefit the community. So there were public safety related things, there were other types of community engagement and community action type things. And then when we narrowed it down, obviously that's way too much, nobody can do that. So we narrowed it down by the end of that meeting down to 9 items. And then we had been selected by AT&T as a Spotlight City, so that gave us access to them and to some of their vendors, their partners, to be able to bring in equipment and things that we might be able to use for the Spotlight. So we worked with them to come up with proof of concept on 4 different items. 3 of them were priority, and then the 4th one, if we could do it. And so that was our method of doing it. The town of Cary's, it worked well for them because they have such a large municipal campus, so they could do it that way. The city of Wilson, I think, because of the capabilities that they have and infrastructure that they have available to them, could do it a different way. So I don't know that there's a single formula for every municipality. You have to kind of look at where you are, what the political environment is, the budget environment is, and where you may be able to leverage something to help you out. And as I said in the first question, that because of the university and because of NC Engine, we were able to leverage several things between them to allow us to move forward with the pilot projects.
I guess at this point, I'm going to keep asking some questions and just get everyone's perspective before we get ready for questions. So are there any other different thoughts you have about this?
Yeah, so I'll take it if you don't mind. I think as you start to look at the smart city initiatives or projects or pilots that you're going after, I think it's critical that the partners that you choose help you form the strategic goal of the city and start to identify the initiative and the objectives that ultimately get you to that. Now, there's 14 cities and counties in the state that have put out a net zero or 100% renewable goal, most of them by 2050, and that is a long process, and there's a lot of things that have to take place to get there. So I think tying into a strategic initiative and setting the objectives to make sure that everything you do is always tied back to that is critical to be able to be successful in these pilots. Otherwise, you start them up, you don't have the value tied back to a strategic initiative, and then it begins to fail, so that's key, I think.
No, excellent. I agree 100% on that. Is it, the plan and the vision of where we're going to do and the constituents that you're working with, how are they serving to do what we do, and make sure that the plan is really serving the people we're looking to do, not just serving, what the city's looking for. I think that's really the consumer engagement part. And how do we reach everybody when doing these types of things? And again, we're all, looking for this clean energy and this decarbonization type of things, but making sure that this meets the needs of what we're trying to do. And that, the goals are acceptable financially and productive for everyone. So,
Steve, we've heard a lot of people have used the word collaboration, and I came into this event, it's part of my daily lexicon. I think that it's absolutely so incredibly crucial that all entities who are participating in any sort of smart city or smart community development, there has to be collaboration there in order for it to be effective. You and I was kind of laughing at myself last night when I was talking to you about how the panel was going to run today. I had to do research on your companies, not the town of Chapel Hill, of course, but I had to do research on your companies because I wasn't entirely sure what you did, and in my daily life, I tend to take this kind of tunnel vision about the infrastructure that my company provides, forgetting, of course, that there are all of these other elements as well. And so I trust that municipalities and communities are a lot more comprehensive in their approach about that than I am, bringing just this one slice of it. But I think that in order for my company to be effective in communities, we also have to know not only what the municipality is doing, how the municipality is serving its constituents, but also what other companies are bringing to that community and how we can all work together to improve that community.
Good point.
Yeah, and I agree. I think sometimes it's just hard for cities to know where to begin. One question I thought about that I hadn't really planned on asking, but it just sort of popped up, was security. As we all proceed down the journey of digital transformation, that means more automation. But as we automate, we're going to be getting more things on devices and things like that. And cybersecurity is the biggest threat for many of us, not just the larger cities like Raleigh and Cary, which are, fine with everything that they're doing. But so how do we address security with all of this? If there's a massive cyber attack and I've just moved to a smart city strategy, what are the things I need to think about from a resiliency strategy?
All right, so I guess I'll start with that one. So like any infrastructure or application that we do, we have a vetting process that we go through for the security, for the data, how things get stored. So although I would not say that, nothing is completely foolproof, that somewhere along the line, there's a bad guy out there now who's thinking of something that we haven't, and bad things will happen. But each one of these technologies that go in, there's usually some type of countermeasure or something that would logically help you. And sometimes it's using things like AI against something like that, so that you're monitoring your networks, you separate your infrastructure out where you've got these endpoints out for your IoT, and that you separate it out, and then you can secure it, but also monitor it and make sure that it's acting the way that it's supposed to do. So anyway, there's countermeasures to it that should be thought of before you turn any of this stuff on, because otherwise it ends up getting used against you or being shut down right at a time when you most need it.
Does anyone else have any ideas about that, or pretty much?
Yeah, well, from the electric utility side, it's, we've had a giant battle growing across technology into the industry, and we actually scared the industry to death back in the middle 2000s. That just, the concerns about cybersecurity almost just shut down technology growth, which was a really bad idea. It's challenges with having access and people having control over things, but the information out there is so much more valuable. And we were talking about cutting off some of the information, which is just a crazy idea. So, putting these things in to detect and deter and then find levels of defense that you continue to do. And we've been putting under great scrutiny, where even down to our supply chain now, we have to show that firmware, hardware, software, all the technologies, that supply chain management is even, doing the things that they're supposed to be, that we can't get into a factory, into a software, into a thing, and these challenges. So the battle for cybersecurity will always be there. Continue to grow standards and do processes and learn and grow, and do multiple things that we can do. And you've got to continue to evolve your IT systems and your OT systems and stay on top of these things and listen and learn and move forward. But don't be scared. I mean, understand the threats that are there, but the information is too valuable for us to just, not want to use it, not want to get to it. So we've got to advance technology and advance these ways to do these things.
I'll add something to that, Steve. So coming from a service provider, I think it's important as we're starting to engage with cities and counties, is typically from our perspective, we're working with operational folks, so people in facilities, and that's where we bring the most value, and we don't always bring in the necessary people through that vetting process. So as we're having these initial meetings, it's probably both of our responsibilities to make sure that we do have the facilities operational folks there, but we also have someone from IT to make sure that as we continue to vet this technology, that it does meet the standards and the protocols that we need so that it fits into the strategy that the CIO might have.
A few more questions, and then we'll open it up a little early for questions. I guess I'm going to play devil's advocate. So I'm in a town or city that doesn't do a lot of this stuff, and I go, well, why is this important? I'm not, I mean, it's important, but we just don't have the time. Let's just keep doing things the way we are. So I know that's a tough question, but just playing devil's advocate, if I'm a city council person and I say, I don't want to be a smart city, let Cary and Raleigh and now Morrisville do that, I'm just going to keep going. What do I need to do to tell the people that are, the towns and the cities that you've got to do this?
I guess I'd say you're not doing it because it's a bumper sticker or it's some political thing. There's true value to it. So if you can look like anything else, you can look at the return on the investment that you're making in it, then it's like any other pitch that you would make to a council. And so if it's an energy efficient buildings, so for instance, an example we had is that the OWASA, our water district, went with the meter readings every 15 minutes. They instituted that. And so we had our resilience officer and sustainability officer took the time, or had somebody take the time to go through these bills, and the timings of this, and all of a sudden you can see that we had an abnormal, what you would not expect, water usage in basically overnight in one of our facilities. And so we would not have known that there was a leak or something that was left on repeatedly, and it was night after night, so it wasn't like it was just someone left the faucet on. So you can take a simple story like that back to someone in the council and say, okay, we're sitting here wasting water. There's all kinds of reasons not to waste water, starting with the fact that it costs money, but also the fact that you're wasting water. So you can tell stories like that as you go along, and it shows that there is a return on that investment. And so you have to make the investment, but then you also have to utilize it, scrutinize the data, and then provide the feedback to the elected officials to demonstrate that it actually has returned that investment.
So the quick wins thing where you're trying to solve all the problems, come in with some benchmarks where you can show that, I've saved money or I've taken traffic off the road or something like that, and that helps your governments make investments. They can see that they're getting.
Right, and it may not be monetary, it could be a public safety thing where you were able to reduce the amount of collisions, or you were able to move traffic through intersections faster than what they had been before. Our buses may run faster or more efficiently. So you can demonstrate that. Some of it you can convert to money, but some of it is just simply working better. It's more efficient.
Something that I heard, I think it was during the lunchtime commentary, is a municipality does not have to embrace every smart city application. But if you've identified a challenge for your community and you can identify a smart city solution for it, develop some champions, start with that application, collect some data from it to demonstrate some sort of value to the community, and then take the next step, rather than trying to solve parking and waste reduction and every other, challenge that a municipality faces, but little by little, ease your way into it.
And every town has a strategic plan. I mean, we just adopted ours in Morrisville, so it's a mobility, livable neighborhood, it's inclusive, economic development, public safety. So look at your plan and then figure out how am I going to solve problems within those plans.
There's an app for that.
Yeah. There you go. One final question for Ann, and I think we're going to open up for questions, but this actually relates to the I saw Jeff Searles today from the North Carolina Broadband Office, and he works for Secretary Boyette, the Secretary of Technology, who reports to the governor. Let's talk about, when you look at digital infrastructure and broadband, and they always talk about the last mile, there's many areas of the state that still don't have the digital infrastructure. So how critically important is it for the state of North Carolina, whether it's the General Assembly, the House, or the State Senate, to continue to work on making those investments? Because from my perspective, it's very tough to begin the smart city journey if you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't have internet access, you just can't get these things going. So what's your thought on that?
Another important, I think, concept that was crystallized for me today is that connectivity does not have to be just one technology. There are several ample technologies that a community can use in order to provide connectivity to its residents. You have wireless, you have fixed wireless, you have wired broadband. There are different solutions that communities can use when considering and collaborating with industry and with their residents to determine what is the best way of delivering that service to that community. And I think it's important for state governments and local governments to consider facilitating this connectivity type of infrastructure in order to make sure that their communities do not get left behind.
Yeah, so we heard about the NC Engine today, but then other programs, grants, just whatever, and continuing to work with the state to see, and the Department of Technology for the state of North Carolina on what they can do.
And I know our panel is about infrastructure specifically, but digital inclusion goes beyond just access to infrastructure. It's also the ability to actually use what is provided to these communities. And I think that there is a gap in some places, maybe not necessarily in this area, but in other places in the state, there are gaps.
Fantastic. Any other thoughts? I have so many questions I could ask. We could be here for another hour, and I know we don't want to do that. But I want to thank each of you. I think you've brought up some very great comments and points that we can take back with us as we begin our smart city journey. And I just want, if cities are listening to this today, hopefully next year I want to see a packed room of like cities across the region and across the state here, because I think it's by listening to this kind of expertise we have in our region that we're going to continue to do great things. So I want to thank our panel. We got about 15 minutes left, so we'd love to have some questions for the audience, if that's okay. We've got mics we're going around. If you don't mind, if you can, just say where you're from, if you want to do that, it would be helpful.
Hi, hello? Yeah. My name's Tony Montalvo from Analog Devices. Sort of related to the last question, small cells have been part of the conversation for a bunch of years, but they haven't been deployed in very big numbers. I think partly due to challenges with site selection, complexities, too many entities involved and all that. Does the panel, and I think Ann, you and your company work on this some, do you see that changing at all?
Regarding small cells and them being deployed in a larger way, yes, I do think that cities and governments are going to start seeing more and more of them, particularly as 5G starts to take off. I also think that the next several years relative to policy, both at a federal, state, and local levels, is going to shift a lot. And the way municipalities use technology shaping the way we operate within the municipalities, we heard some conversation about that during the last speaker. I think that there are going to be things that change with the way infrastructure is deployed that we can't even fathom yet. So yes, the short answer to your question is yes, I do believe that we are going to start to see an increase in small cell infrastructure in the years to come.
Hi, Candy Orr, NC State. It's wonderful to hear your passion and to be forward-leaning with all these devices, but there is an end of use. There is a stewardship component of it. As the infrastructure panel, how are you taking into consideration, because some of these things have a very short life before they become obsolete, how can we either retool and reuse that product, or what is the recycling capability, value add? Where is that? Because that becomes very important to a lot of the millennials in particular with their clean stewardship of the environment.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Technology is changing faster than it ever has, and the replacement is very quick. You know, every 2 years there's a new iPhone and you get a new plan, and we do these types of things. And as the technology advances and moves, reaching that sustainability in what we do with is a difficult challenge. I don't have a good answer for you, but I know from the renewable energy side, we even have these conversations, you know, as lithium-ion batteries and massive types of infrastructure come into place. The life cycles are much shorter than we thought they would be. The cost, the plan, the disposal, the renewables of it, it is something that you're correct, needs to be addressed, and having a plan to do something with this is a challenge. But it's a good point and a good question.
Thank you.